I asked my followers and my guitar friends community, what's the number one thing you need me to explain for you right now on this guitar? In this video, I'm answering your top questions. No fluff, no BS. Grab your axe, let's go get good. Major scales just won't stick. How do I finally lock them in? Well, I have a question for you. Are you maybe trying to squeeze in too much information in one go? When we try to play an entire scale all the way up and all the way down, our mind is very likely to tune out because we get bored of the repetition and then none of it's going to stick. But if you take it one octave at a time, put on a little drum loop, something that gives you some vibe or a backing track, and then short phrases. And especially what you're going to want to look for is, do you know where those root notes, where the one, in this case would be an A, where those live inside of the scale? Try to just stay between one root to another root for a while and make sure that you can end your phrases. Breathe, look around, smell the air, and then it'll start to make a little more musical sense and not just be running it up and down. As I call it, that's just running inventory. I lose the thread mid-solo. How do I stay with the chord changes? Well, it's less about thinking in terms of chord changes as much as it is the song form. So let's say I've got a very simple song structure. G to C to D, and then back to G. Okay, so that's the thing that I need to take care of in my mind. If I write it down, I have it in front of me and I can have a battle plan. I could be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I have this set structure, these parking spaces. That's the type of thing you need to be seeing in your mind, but you got to write it down first so that every time this progression goes around, you're staying on top of it. You have a mental overview. And in particular, what I see a lot of people run into with a progression like this, where it's the same chord at the beginning as it is at the end, like a bookend progression, is that they hit this G and they immediately start over. In other words, they just sort of omit that and then they get off track, right? They go like, here's the beginning. And then they immediately start over the progression right there. So if you write this down, that's my tip for you. Write it down so you have an overview, you have a battle plan, even if it's just a simple jam track, and then keep track of that in your mind. You'll have a mental map. Modes confuse me. Can you show me how to actually use them musically? Yes, I can, but let me ask you a question. Do you know what this is up on the board? It's just an A major scale. And if you know any major scale, you already are using modes. So modes come in all sorts of flavors, right? You've got the major scale, you've got the minor scale, that's another mode. I don't use all the modes, so maybe that'll help rest your mind a little bit. But let me show you how that, just by changing one note within this A major scale, and all I'm doing is taking the G sharp and turning it into a G, I've now just unlocked a completely different sound. And this is what I want you to listen for. And ask yourself, do I like this sound? Do I really want to learn this mode? Because if you don't, then don't worry about it. But if you like the difference between, that's the A major, and now when I go, you notice how that's a very different sound than that regular major that we had before. What I'm playing right now is the Mixolydian mode, and we get thrown off by these long fancy names, but all this is, in terms of a flavor, is switching one note down to that note. And then when you go to figure out, but why? The explanation can be a little more academic and all that, but at least you start off with a feeling of, this is interesting, I like it, and now I want to know more. Can anyone tell me what is the major scale that I'm using right here? That's a D major scale. Did you get it? So the fancy answer to this is that it's a D major scale, that we are starting from the A note, and that creates the Mixolydian mode of A. But for starters, remember, it begins with like, what is the flavor and the sound? And do you like it? Because that's going to help give you the motivation to work through the more brainy stuff to try to learn all the modes. Decide if you like it first. How do you make those animated fretboard graphics? Well, it's pure mischief and mojo, my friend. No, it's just a jam stick. It's a MIDI guitar, and it has been all along. It's got regular pickups. It's got a MIDI pickup. That goes into their software, Jamstick Creator. And then I pull that in using OBS, which is software that I use to broadcast and do the live streams. Put that up on the screen right there. Lastly, I got my iPad right here, and I do the McDoodles, and I just turned it so it freaked everything out, but now it's back. So there it is, iPad, Jamstick, OBS, knock yourself out. Triads make sense. What's the next level after that? Quattros, you need quattros. That's the answer. I keep forgetting what I practice. How do I make it stick? Well, do you ever review the things that you practiced yesterday, today? So a very simple recipe that I've started to tell people because it's catchy and it really does hit the trifecta is that when you sit down to practice, even if it's for 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, blah, 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 have it broken into 3 chunks. The first chunk should be a review of what you played yesterday. You had some time to rest and sleep on it, however long it's been. Maybe it's been 2 days, 2 weeks, but try to dust off where you left off. Okay, that's your review portion. The next, you want to try to find something new, something that will expand your brain and hit all that spongy gray matter in there. So look for something that you're working on to give you a spicy scoop of something that is going to challenge you wherever that is. Where's your next step? Okay, review, new. And the last thing is to play like you. Give yourself some room to just play and explore and improvise. Actually use these things over some songs, over some jam tracks. But you could imagine if you only did one of those things, if you only ever reviewed, you wouldn't be moving forward. If you only played new stuff, there'd be nothing for it to stick to because you'd never revisit it. And if you only jammed and noodled, you'd probably be just exactly where you always were, which is doing the same old riffs every day. You'd get tired of your own improvisation because it wouldn't be getting fresh information. So that trifecta is going to help you out. Hope it does. By the way, if this stuff clicks with you, grab a 14-day free trial inside my community. We got daily workouts, real results, totally different from anything else out there. Give it a go. Suspended chords sound cool, but when do I actually use them? Well, whenever you want in my book. You know that D sus4 that you probably learned early on? It sounds great, right? Well, what is it doing? It basically is different than the regular D chord, because it sounds more like a raised eyebrow, like it has a bit more ambiguity and it needs to perhaps be resolved. Doesn't have to, it's music, you can do whatever, but look at the name, suspension, suspended chord, it's floating in air. It's got more of a lifted sound. So if I have a sus4 chord, when I resolve it down to that major third, that's what it's talking about, by the way, the sus4, that's that 4th degree, then it resolves to that major third. A sus2, similar kind of thing. Those sus chords really sound nice. They're kind of 90s sounding. And if you were to imagine sort of the more airy and kind of in-between sound, they sound kind of emotional on their own. And what makes them suspended is because they're floating somewhere in between. And then when you bring back in a regular chord tone, you've resolved that suspension. So play with them, use your ear, and definitely don't feel like there's just one way to use them. Get creative. I've got lyrics and chords. How do I turn that into a real song? Well, I am a professional songwriter. That's my main deal, actually. And I will tell you, it doesn't get much easier. You just got to put in the work, which means when you have inspiration, strike like lightning and find a way to capture it. When you've got bits of lyrics and titles and chords and melodies, just try to stay on the case. Don't let it cool off, because if it gets too much in your rear view mirror, you won't really be able to get back into that moment of inspiration. So do your best to capture those ideas and have a way to just get your butt in the chair, the writing chair, and just chisel away until you have something that you can come back to the next day and it has arms and legs, meaning it has a full melody, a full structure to it. Bottom line is write one entire form rough draft of a bad song, and then it's a lot easier to rewrite it. If you have a verse where there's one lyric in there that you're not crazy about, keep going to see if you can get to a chorus, if you can get to an outro or an ending. Build the whole structure, even if there's some spots that you're not crazy about, because then you can go back and tweak those and enhance them. It's much better to have a full rough draft, even if it's pretty rough, than try to make a masterpiece and get stuck looking for that elusive third line of the first verse and then never get past it, right? Where do I even begin with transcribing songs? Well, you begin at the beginning, and don't get thrown off by the word transcribing. It sounds very fancy and stuffy, like you need a feather quill. Writing down the exact notes like Beethoven, don't even worry about it. You're just using your ear. So let's take this chord progression. If I needed to learn this, if I didn't know how this song went, I would just have to sit down and listen. And I'd try to find where the bass notes are. Looks like I found the bass note. There's a second bass note. And then back to the beginning. And then it repeats. So I basically am listening for patterns. And as I do that, if I need to write it down, I should. And you can write it down in whatever your, like favorite language is. You might just write down the bass notes being A, and then it does like a D, and then you go to see if you can find out whether was it a major or a minor chord. Oh, it definitely sounds like It was major. So you try to go through like a detective sort of process of elimination. And if you've done that, you've just transcribed a song. You've transcribed the basic harmony of it. And then as you get more comfortable with that, you'll be able to hear more things like what's going on with that solo, what's going on with that fill. But if you start at the basic level of the chord progression, just go with simple songs. Even start with songs that you might already know and just see if you can like really write down what's happening with each change in the song. That'll train your ear like a muscle. It's not just some automatic natural gift. You have to sort of ask your ear over and over again, what was going on there, and see if you can map it out little by little. How do I get from boring bar chords to cool riffs? Well, let me show you. It's real simple. Actually, it's not simple. You just got to follow your instincts and maybe break that bar chord into smaller pieces. A great place to start is, you guessed it, triads. So what am I doing here? I'm drawing a piece of that big old G major bar chord. So instead of just always hitting all 6 strings, could you start to hit just the top 3 strings? When the chord chart might say G major, you could maybe do, boom, 1 strum on the G major, that full bar chord, and then hit a triad up there. Already that's sounding like it's breaking away to maybe play a fill. Right? So the ability to break up a bar chord into smaller pieces, here's another chunk right here. It is yet another triad of the exact same chord, right? So those pink dots right there, that's a triad, that's a triad. Okay, so triads really are your gateway into breaking down the larger bar chords into these really nice, tasty, smaller chunks that already want to launch off and do some tasty fill type of things. Lastly, remember to put it into the groove. If you're playing a simple chord, simple triad, and you're putting that into the pocket, that matters more than finding fancy notes. We don't need more notes, we just need them in the groove. Jazzy chords look great on paper, but how do I make them sound good? Well, experiment and play the ones that you like. I know that sounds a little too obvious, but there's nothing out there saying you have to learn more advanced chords, this, that, and the other. I found myself a few years ago falling in love with the sound of like bossa nova style guitar. And there's a lot to love about it as far as like the rhythms. But in particular, it was these nice shell voicings. So maybe that's my basic answer, is if you find some simplified version of jazz chords, they can be really soothing, I find, on the ear. But this is a matter of taste. You might not enjoy these at all, in which case, we might not be the best of friends, but I wish you luck out there. So right there, I'm playing a root, I'm playing a flat 7, and a minor 3rd. It's a very lean and simple version of an A minor 7. A minor 7 is a pretty standard, beginner jazz chord, and it's great. Beginner doesn't mean it needs to be overlooked. It just means like that's a meat and potatoes chord that you're going to want to know. I'll draw this one up here, and this is just another very simple sort of shell chord voicing of, what would that be, an E7? Right, that's just up here, right? And from that, I could make that a major 7 just by moving that note. So that's my basic takeaway for you, is like get into shell chords. Shell chords are built of just a root, a 3rd, and a 7. And so we get rid of the 5 if a regular triad has a 1, 3, 5. And if you're not familiar with these numbers or this theoretical stuff, don't worry about it. Just go look at some chord charts and see if you can find some simple shell chord versions of jazz chords, and you might just fall in love with the simplicity. Why does mixing major and minor work even if it's quote unquote wrong on paper? I think I know what you mean, and a lot of people struggle with this because let's say we have this, this little, that A progression that we're doing. It's kind of blues, it's kind of rock, it's kind of right in the middle. So if I play A minor pentatonic, and if I play A major pentatonic, they both kind of work, right? Major, minor, major, and minor mixed in there. I think, honestly, it's one of these things where like the less I explain it, the better. I want you to get fluent with your major pentatonic and your minor pentatonic, and then try to play them back to back and test your ear. Yeah, there are some moments, let's say when I go to that D chord, where it's got some notes that are in the major pentatonic, But that same D chord, if I make it a D7, is like the 4 chord of like of an A blues. It's got a chord tone in it that comes straight out of the A minor pentatonic. So the theoretical answer is that you're hitting these chord tones as they pass by. But I think the more intuitive answer is just that like the blues is based off of like a very vocal style. And in the singing style of all those notes in between, all that vibrato is getting into where the lines blur between the major and the minor third, the 5, the flat 5, all those notes that we get to know. I want you to experiment with those and you tell me why they work and when you like to use them. Don't be afraid to play some wrong notes. I got a bunch of free lessons and tabs and backing tracks ready for you. The link is in the description. You know the deal. How do I know which note to start or end my licks on? Ooh, player's choice, really. And as you train your ear to aim at certain sounds, you'll have more confidence knowing that you can sometimes end your phrase in a very stable way or sometimes end it more open-ended. I'll show you what I mean. We've got D. This progression is in D. I'm playing the note D, so I'm playing the most home-sounding note there is in this scale. And that sounds pretty good. If I end my phrases with that D, it sounds like I've got this confident punctuation, right? But if I were to always end and begin my phrases with that root, it would get pretty samey, right? So maybe I explore a note that might have a little more of an unresolved feeling. Let's try the third. So if I go, that's the root. So your goal is to start to collect these different notes within a scale. When you get comfortable within a scale shape or a pattern, collect them like Pokemon and decide that like, yeah, this one has more of a stable kind of we're coming back home flavor to it. This one over here sounds a little more like it's a singer who's singing. That's how I feel like the major third in that case, what we were playing there. It sort of sounds like it's very melodic, but it does want to go other places to resolve often. And then the last thing that you're going to want to do is just look at the chords. Again, map out those chord changes. Ask yourself, what are the chord tones of each chord as they go by? Take your time with it, spell them out, and already it'll sound like you're playing a phrase that goes really well with those changes. So if I play these chord tones of that progression, sounds like I'm moving with the changes confidently because I am. I'm just hitting the chord tones, spice that up and make it more interesting. And now you've got some new Pokemon for your pocket. I don't know. Everyone talks about the circle of fifths. What am I supposed to do with it? I don't know. It's pretty imposing, isn't it? Well, for starters, just notice what you notice. I'll help you through with that as we look at this great wheel of truth. We start at C. As I go this direction, can you tell me what's interesting about those notes, those distances? Each one of these jumps is moving by a fifth. Why would that be interesting? Because within a key, for example, within C, it's great to know very quickly what the 5 chord is, because I'll be seeing a lot of that. It's also really important to see other relationships, like if I'm in C and I go this way, I'm moving by fourths. So if you go to the clockwise direction, you're moving by fifths. If you go to the counterclockwise, you're moving by fourths. Again, you're like, why should I care? Well, if you can quickly identify, and this is just one of the many ways you can use this wheel, I can identify if C is my starting chord or my home chord, my 1 chord. If I go 1 notch, towards F, that right there, that's the 4 chord. If I go 1 notch towards the G, that's the 5 chord. So I've just identified the 1, the 4, and the 5 of this key of C. And then if I move that around, and this is why they sell those little handy dandy like decoder rings that take the wheel and you can slide it around. If I said that D was my home, D is the 1 chord, that right away, if I took that same pattern, I go 1 notch over there towards the G, that's my 4 chord. If I go 1 notch from the D to the A, that's a 5 chord. So long story short, that's just one quick example of how the circle of fifths reveals certain relationships and patterns that will help you quickly identify like what chords go with what key. It'll tell you like how many sharps or flats are in each key, and it'll take that off of your brain so that if you ever need to reference it, you can be like, oh yeah, that's where I am. Oh, maybe I could try that chord. Let's say if you're writing a song, or oh, look at that. That explains why that chord is in this song that I'm trying to learn. It gives you a way to sort of zero in what key you're in, what chord you're using, what notes go with that scale. So don't be overwhelmed by it. It's not something that you have to just memorize. It's a piece of reference information that you can see patterns and relationships. Don't get stressed out by it. Just use it and see if it's meaningful for what you need. Arpeggios sound robotic when I play them. How do I make them musical? Well, you just got to mix it up. Put on some kind of drum feel. Take any old arpeggio that you're working on. Let's take just A major right here and now, I'm not saying that's the best riff ever written, but what I played with was repetition. I didn't just purely go all the way down and all the way back up. Don't think that just because arpeggios are challenging and they're somewhat kind of like puzzle pieces that they have to be played like a robot. You've got to show yourself that you know how to really use them if you can make them smooth and then break the pattern. So you establish the pattern so you remember it, right? You put in the work, but then you find ways to mix in a little fill. And most of all, this is the real thing that I think you'll enjoy. So if we take this progression that we were playing a little bit earlier, can I play the arpeggios that move with it and actually sort of surf with the changes? A, D, right? A little bit of repetition and then some space. And then just put in a fill. So again, establish a pattern, then break it up, and then it'll always be sort of like breathing life into it as you go. No more Mr. Roboto. I'm jamming with friends. What can I play up the neck that actually sounds good? It's triads. It's triads. You know it's triads. It's triads. It's triads. They're down here. You're up here. They're doing this. You're doing this. It's triads. Next question. Chicken, pickin, bends, twangy stuff. How do I learn that stuff fast? Well, you better be watching Guthrie Trap. I'm sure you already are. But I'm not the expert in this domain. I'll just say that. But I do love hybrid picking, and honestly, I don't know where hybrid picking and chicken picking, what the difference is and all that, because again, I'm not the expert. But when I do my sort of Mark Knopfler style of thing, a lot of what I'm doing there is I'm plucking a note and then stopping it. So that'd be an exercise you want to try. Could I take, let's say this note right here, I'm looking at kind of this piece of a D minor triad, second string here. Can you pluck a note and then stop it, and then pluck it and stop it, and really aggressively kind of pluck it and stop it, and then you get that real percussive. That sounds a little bit like plucking. Now, as far as learning it fast, I think you just want to be smooth. Smooth is fast when it comes to learning anything, especially with guitar. So if you want to take one bend like and just decide how long does it take you to learn a new bend and to really make it so that you could play it in any key. And once you can take one cool bend and move that smoothly into your vocabulary, so it could be any tempo, any key, then it's time to move on to the next one. Because then it actually sticks, and then it feels like it's coming on a lot faster, rather than if you sat down to try to learn 5 different bends and then they never quite sounded really like dialed in. So take it nice and smooth when it comes to all these different kind of different moves and stuff like that. Add them to your vocabulary. And then when you know it's time to move on, that'll be fast. My rhythm playing feels stiff. How do I loosen it up? Well, first of all, it's good that you're establishing the awareness. The first step is just admitting that it's time, okay? Second step comes down here on the foot cam. That's right. Tap your stinking foot. Whatever you're playing, start getting your body involved. Don't just think that rhythm comes from ready, set, go. Okay, I see too many people that don't count themselves in. So that's my 2 biggest things for you right now. Every time you go to play, whether it's along with a backing track or just totally on your own, count yourself in. This is what the pros do. So if I'm ready to play a groove on, G to an E minor, whatever it is, I first hear the tempo in my head. I visualize where I want it to sit, like 1, 2, and then I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Say it out loud. That's a bonus point. Okay, so you counted yourself in. You didn't jump in nervous or falling behind. You got that foot thump going along, which would be tricky at first, but you pat the head, rub the tummy, and soon enough you'll get that going on autopilot, so that if you're not always playing all these chords, you'll still have the rhythm. Watch. Right? So I kept the tempo going all the way through that. Even though I was playing sparse little notes there, I had the foot holding it down for me. Try that out. Let me know how it goes. My pick feels awkward every time. How do I hold it right? Well, maybe you're holding it too tight. Hey, if you squeeze a pick too tight, then everything becomes very rigid. Okay, there's a lot of tutorials out there about holding your pick. You know, you're going to have to find your own style. But I use these large picks that are basically, the reason I do this is because if it gets flipped around in my hand, I can't go wrong. It's all the same angle, right? It's an isosceles triangle. Question for you. Are you holding the pick like this, where your index finger is going in the same direction as the point of the pick? If so, that can be really tough to get a smooth strum going. I would recommend instead you turn your finger like that. So it's a little bit like you're giving that little thumbs up that politicians give when they're giving a stump speech, right? That, boom. And then you just get a little pick right there, just sticking out the side. Okay. And don't squeeze it too hard. If you squeeze it too hard, it's going to be too rigid. So try to make it nice and loose. It's okay if you drop the pick, pick up another one. That's why they put all those picks on the microphone stands when rock stars are playing. It's because they keep it loose. Okay. Lastly, I'd say turn your thumb towards the floor. Give it an angle. This is just my opinion on how to make it smooth, but I see a lot of players holding their pick parallel to the string, right? You think you want to get a nice flat connection to the string, but that creates really sort of rumbly, I'm thinking like going over the rumble strip, speed bumps. It gets too abrupt. It's like you're hitting a rubber band every time, versus if I just simply turn my thumb towards the floor, ooh, like a hot knife through butter, okay? I've got a job, kids, life. Me, I just got dogs. I do have a life, and this is my job. The question is, what practice routine actually works? I mean, not to be tooting my own horn, but you should join the Guitar Friends community. You get a 2-week free trial. We do daily workouts. I mean it. I guide you through a workout every single day. You don't have to worry about what to practice. You just play for about 20 minutes. You get on with your life, and then there's continuity because we have a theme week over week. Link is in the description. Check it out. But honestly, it's good. I haven't played in years. Where do I even begin again? Well, you're here, aren't you? That's pretty great. There's my doggy moving in the background. Just continue with this curiosity. You clicked on videos, you're getting hungry. Keep your guitar close, keep it out of the case. So you walk past it, you feel a little bit guilty. And then before you know it, you're gonna pick it up and just play for 20 seconds, not joking. The next day, play for 2 minutes. Snowball, okay? Train your body to want to grab the guitar. Even if it's just that out of 100 times that you grab your phone, we know it's more, but out of 100 times a day that you grab your phone, maybe it starts to be that 5 of those times you grab your guitar, play a few chords. Then maybe it starts to be 10, 20, 30 times that you would have gone to your phone, you're going to grab your guitar. Start replacing that nervous itch to do something else with guitar, 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 guitar. Don't ask any other questions about it, meaning don't try to immediately hit yourself with learning the whole cage system or whatever. Just grab the darn instrument and move on from there. Momentum. Momentum is king. What's a good next step to go beyond cowboy chords? Well, our little partner, I'd say a lot of times people would suggest the next step is bar chords, and that's not wrong. But today, just to be spicy, I'm saying triads. Just go straight from this. Here's a C. I want you to get into playing that. That'll get you in the neighborhood of playing some really cool fills. In fact, let's spell that out. So you got a C major right there. I've got a ton of stuff on triads, by the way. If you want to dive deeper, I'll link a video below. We got that one right there, and we got this one right here. These are little tiny chords, and they're fun. So watch this. There's an open C cowboy chord. Now Now there's a C chord right there, but it's just a 3-note version of it. I'll draw those notes in blue, okay? So you're gonna have these little hammer-ons and pull-offs there that create these fun little combinations for fills. You see how there's the chord, and then we've got this. Wouldn't that sound nice over a, there's that cowboy chord, now here's the spicy chord. There's that cowboy chord again, now this triad up here. You'll get all these nice colorful combinations, and you can treat these little versions of a chord just like you would an open chord. So when the chord chart, next time you see a chord chart that says C, you could do that, but you could also go straight to this spot right here and add some of these doodads. And the way that you'll find them, this is your one thing you got to remember, is like, well, where is the C? There it is. That's your anchor. So if you can start to get to know the note names on the fretboard, just one string at a time, you know, you count your way up and be like, okay, where's C? Boom, that's a C. Then you spell that shape. If it was a G, you go to the G, you spell that exact same shape, see? So just like these chords have their certain shapes, you're gonna have shapes for these triads, and then you'll be off to the spicy side of town. What's going on in your head while you're soloing? Wouldn't you like to know? Hey, just to make it simple, I'll just say that I'm seeing smaller pieces of bigger patterns. So if I was playing in A, I would not be seeing this whole, you know, box one the whole time, right? That would be like too much information to be like carrying around. I wouldn't be seeing like all the different triad shapes all on top of each other all the time. I'd be seeing them as and when I went to access them. So here's the thing that maybe you want to take away is that we practice the full shapes over and over again so that the muscle memory can take over. So that when I then go to try to play a fill, like in this area of the scale, it's like a searchlight. I'm just seeing the area that I need for that given fill. So what I did, I just took away a bunch of the extra stuff that I didn't need. And then when I'm in this little zone of this sort of chunk of an A minor pentatonic mixed with some A major, I'm just living in that smaller version of the playground that, yeah, that's there if I need it. But I think sometimes we get overwhelmed with all these diagrams and all these dots. You don't see them all at once. It's more like a heat map where when you spend a lot of time in one area, you just start to get it grooved so that you see what you need, when you need it, and not more, not less. Lastly, I've got 12 bar blues down. Congratulations. What's the next progression I should learn? Interesting. Okay. Here's the real answer. If the blues is so fun to play, why not just play a lot more of it? Just go learn a bunch of songs. Take any one of your favorite blues artists, let's say Albert King, let's say Stevie Ray Vaughan, Buddy Guy, B.B. King, and learn a bunch of their tunes. Go study B.B. King's Live at the Regal, that live album. So good. And what you're gonna hit are different tempos and different feels and different structures. So yeah, maybe one part of it might be that they're playing a blues where it's like, they go to the 4 chord right away, right? That's one variation of a blues. They might do that thing where they go to the 2 chord and make it a dominant. They might go back to the 1 right there. All those little nuances are fun, but instead of overanalyzing them, collect them. Once again, like Pokemon. Go out there and play a lot of songs and add this to your vocabulary so that when you're dropped into one of those jam sessions at like a blues night, you'll immediately feel, oh, this is one of those sort of up-tempo sort of shuffles. Oh, this one's more of like a slow blues. And then you'll have songs that pop in your head like, oh, this one sounds like Tin Pan Alley. This one sounds like Cold Shot. This one sounds like Testify. And use those as a reference, because then not only will you have the ingredients, like the chord progressions and the different, oh, it goes to the 2, it goes to the 4, all that kind of stuff. But then you'll have some inspiration to draw from. And that really is the language of the blues. And then on any given night, you're just playing a blues, right? The variations, right? It's a bunch of real questions with a bunch of real answers. If you want to know more about how my brain works and you want to actually work with me, start your free trial, jump into the daily workouts, and if you're curious about triads, check out this video next. It's a deep dive, you know what I mean?